It's time for a new perspective with your host, Pastor Mike Sherbino. A word to the wise from someone who's been pastoring people in churches for a whole lot of years. This is the Sunday special edition, but you may be watching on another day because Mike's message isn't only for Sundays, but for every day. Mike brings a host of people together to talk about the complexities of this life, of being a Christian in a world that seems to be going in reverse sometimes. But most importantly, a comfort for your heart, mind, and soul, because that's exactly what Jesus wants for you. From one of his mighty churches just outside of Toronto, here's Mike Sherbino.
Ever found yourself hitting a roadblock? I mean, not necessarily a literal one. I hope not for that, for your sake. But maybe it's an emotional roadblock, or maybe it's a physical challenge, or perhaps it's a financial situation. You've had a dream and you just can't push through it. Many times that happens in our life. And Mitch, I don't know what your recourse is. One of the easiest things is just to sit down and quit.
Absolutely. And Mike, there's been roadblocks in my life where I am faced with that choice. Am I going to get negative, frustrated, or am I going to push through this? And Jesus has been a great help, but certainly, Mike, a lot of people today are wondering what to do with the roadblock in front of them.
And as we think about those roadblocks, I love the person who said quitting is not an option. And many times I've reflected on that. I have a dear friend who's an older person, severe health challenges. And whenever I say, how are you doing? He said, you know what? I'm fine. I'm pressing on. I'm going to keep going. And it's not that he's denying reality. It's just that determination that God has given him to say, I'm going to live out the day. And today's guest is a woman who emblazes that in so many ways. Vahen King is with us again. She's been on the show many times. It's just always an honor for me to have her here today. Vahen, welcome to the show. So glad you're here. I'm pumped when I knew you were getting back on. And just get us a quick update on your life. What's been happening in your journey?
Oh my goodness. This is not a long enough show, but just as the year was coming to an end, I spent my time in Thailand, speaking in schools, traveling, still running my nonprofit. I'm not sure how much we'll get into, but I'm working on a new mental health and empowerment course. So, but myself, I'm learning to protect my endurance and keep fighting the good faith.
Well, and in case people don't realize it, you do all of that because some would say you're trapped, but you don't see it that way. You have the use of a wheelchair, don't you? And just tell us that story in a nutshell, and then we'll bring everybody up to date.
Well, the nutshell version is, I had a dream and my life was going great. I was going to sail off into the sunset and marry a really great guy and change the world. Well, it wasn't really quite like what I expected. I still married a great guy. But the week after he proposed to me, I ended up in a hospital fighting for my life. They didn't know if I was going to actually live for the day. Within a half a day, I was paralyzed from the chest down. And they finally diagnosed me with transverse myelitis and said that, you know what, you'll never be independent. You'll need full-time care. And so that was kind of the roadblock that I hit in my life, this obstacle, this thing that was going to limit me. And I'm like, so I had all the voices in my head. Your life will never matter. Will I matter? Will this guy still want me? And do I still have a future? And yes to all the things. Yes, he still wanted me. Yes, it's still a future. And not only a future, but a thriving life.
Well, Vahen, your resiliency in the way that God has given you strength and he's given you a future, even where other people would have thought that you had none, that he continues to be your God. That's an encouragement to me. And we can actually see part of your life, and you didn't mention it earlier, part of your life on this new show, Push. We can find that on CBC, and it's filled with an incredible cast of strong, resilient people. Tell us about how this show came to be and what it's all about.
Oh, it's first of all, it's the first major network in a primetime series on Canada that features a leading cast with disabilities. And how this all came about is a dear friend of mine, Bean Gill, got approached to do a document series on her life. Anyway, she's like, wait a minute, my life is great. I know it, but I have a lot of other really great wheelie peeps in my life. And so the document series features just her friends, and we're all people with disabilities, but we're all living life. And as she puts it, kicking ass and taking names.
So give us a little more detail about the program, okay? What's it featuring? What are some of the storylines?
Well, Push is made up of all of us really great peeps, and we call them wheelie peeps because we wheel around. But our lives are, while we do face extra challenges, what you'll see in this show is, for example, there's a gentleman who had always been a concert pianist. And when he had his injury, he never thought that he could play again. And while we were recording the show 3 years after his injury, he actually performed in a concert with this adaptive device that he created so that he could play piano again. And boy, I tell you, yeah, Mozart, watch out, right? And then there's the main character, her life being, she's basically fought to be where she is today. She started her own rehabilitation neuro rehab center. She's an influencer. She's, all about inclusion, diversity, and equality, in which we all should be. And then there's one of the few quadriplegic moms. Like, she actually has a baby on the show. Wow. And so just watching, like, if there's anybody out there that's like thinking that you can't do something, watch the show, and I promise you it will get you off your couch.
Wow. So Vahen, let me ask you, I'm wondering what it's like to be on a show like that. It's a highly emotional, it's an extremely truthful look into all of your lives. I'm wondering, has that been freeing and very, fun is too light of a word, but I guess I'll stick with freeing. Has it been a freeing experience for you to be on the show and let other people take a glimpse into what it's like to have to be in a wheelchair? Or has that been difficult to be that open and vulnerable?
Listen, I want to tell you that in the disability community, we are all about vulnerability, openness, and fun. You can use the word fun because it was fun to do this. While there was some very emotional moments and it was like laced with emotion, but that's human nature. You know, we're a show about real lives, and it's about seeing and hearing us just as we are. So it's real, it's raw, and it was fun, right? And so being a part of this show really is just allowing other people to, it's opening doors, allowing other people to be able to talk about things that we don't talk about. And I know, as for myself, as a person with a disability, I had all those stigmas about what it means to be a person with a disability. Oh, you are a person with a disability, now you can't do this, this, and that. Or, people think that because you have a disability, that your life is just going to suck and it's not as good. Well, I know a lot of able-bodied people who are not doing near as much as half of these people on the cast and not near as happy. So while it is like sad and all the emotions, it's very freeing for us to be able to finally share the glimpses into our lives. But I believe it's also freeing up other people who are watching that, like, yeah, we need to be real, because right now, look around, we need to be real and vulnerable so that we could like get over ourselves and actually really connect on a deeper level.
Fantastic. Vahen, there's so much I want to talk about in the second part of our interview, and especially unpacking the whole area of mental health and well-being. And I know you speak to life into so many situations that are dark in individual lives. I want to encourage our people to stay with us. We're going to be right back with Vahen King in just a moment.
Vahen is dynamic. She's resilient. She's very witty. In 2017, Vahen was crowned the first ever Miss Wheelchair Canada and Miss Kindness World. Vahen is the author and publisher of 2 books, fittingly titled Going Farther and Contagious Courage. Yet as you watch her powerful story unfold, you'll see how she weaves these unwelcome struggles together into a story of hope and courage. She's an international speaker and the founder of the nonprofit organization Going Farther. Vahen's courage is contagious. Her message is igniting hearts with hope and inspiring others to have the courage to go farther. Are you ready?
Hey, we're back with Vahen. And Vahen, as I was watching that clip with you doing the skydiving, that was inspirational. What were you feeling exactly at that moment?
Well, I did have a big head rush most of the way down, to be honest. The adrenaline and the lack of oxygen, I never expected. I didn't know what I was expecting, but it was just like, wow, I'm actually not as afraid as I thought I would be, or whatever. It was just like you look around, and if you watch the full video, I actually do a wave as I'm like looking over Edmonton, you know.
Oh, wow, what a rush. But hey, you know what? Let's take that thought and go into something that's kind of the dark side of life, because those moments, we all need them. And getting to those moments often is a challenge for people. I know you speak so often about mental health issues and how people can be strong. And you've discovered your strength in Jesus. Unpack that for us. As what do you do to keep yourself mentally fit?
That is a loaded question. I'm glad you asked it. And yeah, like honestly, when first of all, when I did that skydive and I realized that I did it and it wasn't as afraid, I wasn't as terrified as I thought it would be. Um, and then, like actually, just after that event, I was actually in some prayer time, and he was telling me not to be afraid. And I'm like, I thought about that after I was like 14,000 feet in the air. And I was like, okay, so God took me 14,000 feet to show me that I can like be without fear at 14,000 feet, to tell me not to be afraid. Oh my word, now I'm terrified. Where are we going?
Wow.
Right? But it's oh, how do I stay sane and safe and healthy? To put it really simply for our viewers, because there's so much to unpack here, Mike and Mitch, sometimes in this season, and more often than I would admit, it's doing the next right thing.
I like that. What do you mean the next right thing?
It is the next right thing means if I just rushed off without eating breakfast, or if I'm like exhausted and the tasks that I'm looking at in front of me need to be done, but yet I need a nap. It's are the dishes in the sink. There's a lot of things we can do for our mental health, and it's more than just praying. Praying is a great piece of it. Living out your life in faith is a great piece of it, but we actually need to be taking care of ourselves in ways that I never realized my whole life. You know, I thought, oh, you work, you burn out, and then you rest, and people ask you what's wrong. Do you realize that there's actually 7 areas that your life needs rest in? Anyway, so yeah, I've learned to do the next right thing, whatever that looks like for you today, whatever the next right thing is. Sometimes that's how you can stay mentally healthy.
Well, let me ask you, your latest course, you call it Mental Health Empowerment, and just share a bit about what that is all about. You're talking about mental health. Maybe give us a little bit of a spoiler.
Well, the spoiler alert is talking about being the hero in your own story. We talk about hero are resilient, and they're courageous, and they're adaptable, and they're determined. And a lot of people look at their lives and what they're going through right now, and I don't think that they would say that they were those things. Sometimes I don't even feel those things, but it's not about a feeling. Courage is not the absence of fear. You know, resiliency, you can't develop resiliency without some roadblocks and some things going on. And so, because I know what it's like to have all those roadblocks and all those things that I'm fighting forward, I wanted to develop something that aims to rehabilitate the mind and spirit after trauma or all these unwelcome events, and provide some support and tools for people facing unwelcome circumstances that enables them to grow a stronger mindset to move forward. And the program is flexible and adjustable time commitments and all those things, but we're going to work on how your beliefs are shaped, you know, the self-talk and the goal setting. Like there's so much that we miss out on by not actually acknowledging these things in our lives. And so why it's important to me is, listen, I'm not creating anything that's specifically new. I'm just wanting to be the voice that's going to step up and maybe fill in a gap where there's gaps in mental health.
Well, so Vahen, you talk about resiliency, and you say that you don't build resiliency without having some roadblocks. But I know there are many people who come across a roadblock and they just decide to throw in the towel, and they say, that's it, I give up, or they turn and they cope with all sorts of things, alcohol, drugs, or they become very closed off. And so for some people, a roadblock is actually the end of the road. But for yourself, roadblocks became an opportunity to build resiliency. How do we make sure that roadblocks build resiliency and they're not the end of our road?
That's actually, so good. So good. I love this conversation because the roadblocks in my life, I actually did think that they were going to be the end of me. And that's the whole point. Like the overwhelming trauma, the struggle, they are roadblocks that you can get off, but you have a choice. You have a choice. And while some people, that choice is harder because you don't have the support, you don't have, you just don't have the support. And so it's harder. And when it comes to addictions and all those things, there's many, many more roadblocks. But I believe that what we need to focus on is not what's wrong with you. Let's fix your mental health program. Let's fix your mental health, and then so you can move on. But no, what about let's see how we can help you manage and cope in those crisis moments. And so that is what I want to do. I want to be able to help people build your self-confidence, because it's not about let's get rid of that cell phone. I'm just going to sit by simply saying that cell phone is there. Right. And like, how many of us can actually live without a cell phone from now until we die? I think that would be shorter. If we lived without our cell phone, I think some of us would die. But so mental health piece, it's not about taking that from you. It's about how can we develop, okay, let's take a break for an hour. Can you do that? Can you have sanity for an hour? Can you increase your confidence? Can you accept who you are? Because I believe that acceptance piece, because when we do things that we're not proud of, we self-deprecate and we tell ourselves that we're not worthy and all these things. So mental health is really about accepting who you are and then looking for the safe places wherever you can find them. And I know a lot of people don't have those safe places, but that we need to be safe places so that people can come to us with their struggles and say, you know what, I'm not doing okay. And it's be okay to not be okay. So there's so many layers to that.
And we've got just about a minute and a half left. You, in talking about mental health, you also have recognized that, the pandemic is not over for many people emotionally. You talked about it at a mayor's breakfast. Give us the highlights of that. What were you talking about?
Protect your endurance. That's the word that as 2019 was going to an end, protect your endurance. And it's funny how all of my life growing up and going through obstacle or challenge after challenge, I would always say, it's not getting through it. That's the issue. It's the after effects. And I believe that even World Health Organization said that the impact of COVID-19 on mental health cannot be made light of. And there have been worrying signs of more thoughts of suicide and people just wanting to end their lives. And so it's like, there's no wonder that we're told to protect our endurance. That's the word I got. And so how do we protect our endurance after this pandemic? We need to start looking at things in our lives and how it affects us, and start stripping off things that weigh us down. Hebrews 12:1-2 says, strip off every weight that slows you down and let us run the race with endurance. Because listen, there's some things that we're carrying that maybe we could handle post or pre-pandemic, but post-pandemic, if we don't make some adjustments, we're not going to make it.
So good. Vahen, I know that if you're not being an actress, movie star on push, you're also called to be a preacher. You got a timely word for today. And I just want to thank you for being back on the program. And, as a father of 5 daughters, I would be remiss to say, I think your hair looks fantastic. Just want you to know that. And I look forward to the next time you're back with us. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, Mike and Mitch.
Hey, stay with us. We'll be right back as I'm going to be teaching again from God's Word.
Well, we've just come out of our time with Vahen King, and I just appreciated the conversation so much as she shared with some of the, not just the roadblocks that she's faced in life, but the way that she learned resilience. And Mike, I think two things come together. Two things that she said come together and form a really beautiful picture. One of them is the idea it's okay to not be okay. And so learning to say, okay, you know what? I don't have to have everything all together all the time. Being excessively critical of myself is not. And
sometimes we want to pretend that we do.
Absolutely. And as I want to project that perfection thing, but as we learn to be vulnerable with each other, as she shared, we can actually help each other. But it doesn't end there. And as she talked about, a roadblock is not the end of our journey. We need to learn resilience, saying, okay, I've hit this roadblock. I can either quit or I can push through it and become stronger for it. And so I think not being excessively critical, but at the same time, learning to say, here's where I'm at. How am I going to go forward? I think that's so helpful and so healthy in life.
I think too, though, when we hit the roadblock and we can hear the message, don't quit, keep pressing on. The reality is sometimes we just feel, I don't know how to do that.
Yep.
And if I could suggest a couple things, just to our viewers. So here's what I would suggest. First of all, as Vahen said, we need to pray. We need to give each situation to God. But I'm also reminded in the Old Testament of a situation when Moses was called to lift up his hands and intercede for the people. And it says, as long as your hands are up, the battle's going to be won. He had two guys come along to hold up his arms to sustain him. And maybe that's what God's calling you to do today, to come along and hold up the arms of someone who needs some help.
Hi, I'm Rachel Joy Barbeau, former national sportscaster, founder of I'm Changing the Narrative, and upcoming author of a book called Relentless Joy. I'll tell you about that in a moment. But first, I want to drop a nugget of wisdom on you. Have you even pondered, I talk about this about upcoming book, what your ancestors went through? I'm talking about your grandmother's grandmother, and your grandfather times 20 for you to even be alive today. Odds are they went through being displaced from their land. They might have gone through slavery. They might have gone through the Depression. They might have gone through food scarcity. You don't know what they went through just for you to be alive today. So let me drop this on you. How dare you not go for that dream? How dare you not go for that job? How dare you not start that business? How dare you not mend that relationship? How dare you not live your life to the absolute fullest? They gave everything for you to be alive today. And so did Jesus, by the way. They lived their life. They overcame so much just for you to be alive today. So go and do it. And also, please grab a copy of Relentless Joy. I'd love to connect with you and see you soon.
We can't help but love springtime, especially in Niagara. I've lived across the country and I've seen the Maritimes, the West Coast, the prairies. But here today in Ontario, it doesn't get much better than this. Matter of fact, I looked down at all the beautiful grass and the dandelions. It's kind of like the child's flower that God has given to them. And I'm reminded of that verse that says, He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He restores my soul. And what a cool setting just to remind us of that. We've been talking out of the book of Romans chapter 8, how God is working out His great plan through your life and mine, and that we can trust Him. But oftentimes, as we said the other day, if we don't trust, we're going to rust. And God invites us to experience His green pastures, even in the midst of those hard moments. I don't know what they might be for you. You might be on easy street right now, but dollars to donuts, the hard times will come. And in those hard times, I find more than anything else, God uses them to conform me to His likeness, so that I come to that place and say, Lord, I'm willing to be made willing. But in Romans chapter 8, and we come to the final section today in verses 31, he says, what shall we say to all these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? I love that phrase. If God's for me, who can be against me? That gives me perspective on life. And even today, my wife had to remind me of getting that perspective, because sometimes things were just too up close and I couldn't see the bigger picture. I don't always see the bigger picture, but by faith, I can believe that God is leading me and guiding me. It says, if God is for us, who can be against us? But He also provides for us in the midst of the journey. He says, He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? That's God's provision. He will give me all things. Does that mean I'm going to win the lottery or get a new vehicle? No, that's not what he's talking about. But all that I need to survive, all that I need to cope, all that I need is in him. You know, the Apostle Paul wrote, he said, I've learned to be content, for whether in a little or a lot, I can trust in my Heavenly Father. And I've discovered in my own journey, he doesn't always give me what I want, but he always provides what I need. The green pastures. But he also provides something else. Not only does God give us perspective, and not only does he give us provision, but you know, he gives us his peace. Listen to verse 33 of Romans 8. Who will bring any charge against God's elect? You see, Satan wants to point his finger of accusation at you, saying, you know, shame on you. God will never forgive you for what you did. Nobody else will. Why would God? And we can be overwhelmed with that. It can lead to depression. It can lead to suicidal thoughts and sadly sometimes suicidal actions. Don't go there, because God says he wants us to know his peace. He says, who can bring any charge against God's elect? No one can, because Jesus has paid for all my sin. And that is the power. That's the power of the gospel. And when I know that, my goodness, I can lie down in the green pastures. I can just kick back and relax. There's one other part, and here it is. There is an incredible promise. God gives us perspective. He says, I'm going to provide for your every need. He says, I'll give you peace. And there's a beautiful promise in Romans 8, verse 35 and 36. I got to read it to you. It says, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? I've read this so many times at a funeral. Who can separate us from the love of Christ? So tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness, or danger, or sword. No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors. Nothing can separate us from his love. A few days ago, we talked about how God is working out his plan in all things, from the major crisis in life to the flat tire, to the fact that if you're like me, Murphy's Law, every line I get in to pay to the checkout, it's always the slowest line. And all those things, God is working out his plan. And he wants us to remember that nothing can separate us from his love. Nothing. No matter what man does to you, whatever your situation is, we can be secure in the fact that we are loved by God. Some of you have been let down deeply by people you thought you could trust. Others have taken advantage of you. But God says, I will be a friend who sticks closer than a brother. I will be your refuge and your strength. And it's in me that you can find the peace that passes all understanding. Isn't it time you lay down in the green pastures? Can I invite you today to pray with me a simple prayer? A prayer of surrendering your life to God, to start afresh with him and saying, I'm yielding my life to you today. Why don't you pray with me? Father, I commit my life to you. I'm trusting Jesus to be my Savior, to forgive me for my sins. I want this to be a new beginning. And despite the hardships, I'm choosing to believe that you are with me. Lead me into your green pastures today. Amen.